Hi all, I am Mrs. Aramagalaxmi from SJSVM for the online class of 10th Standard Science. Hope you all have watched part 1 videos of laws of motion, where I had discussed Newton's first law and its related terms. If not, please watch it. This is the continuation of part 1 video, where we are going to discuss about Newton's second law, third law and gravitational law. Now we shall move on to the class. First we will have a short recap of the last session. First we had discussed about force and its effect, then linear momentum, which is the product of mass and velocity. After that we had discussed about Newton's first law, inertia. According to Newton's first law, every object continues in the same state of rest or uniform motion unless an external force acts on it. This inability of the body to change its state is called as inertia. Then the types of forces, like parallel forces, unlike parallel forces, balanced forces, unbalanced forces, all we had discussed. Then rotating effect of force. That is, when we open a door, it rotates about its hinges. That is an example for rotating effect of force. Then the resultant. The resultant is the final force acting on an object as a result of multiple forces on the object. The equivalent is just opposite to resultant. Two equal and opposite forces acting on the same object causes rotation of the object, which is called as moment of couple. And couple refers to the two forces acting on it. Finally, the principle of moments. According to principle of moments, the algebraic sum of clockwise moments is equal to the anti-clockwise moments. These are the topics we had discussed earlier. Now we shall move on to the Newton's second law, which states that force acting on an object is directly proportional to the rate of change of linear momentum of the body, and the change in momentum takes place in the direction of the force. Here, we will explain this with an example. The Newton's second law is represented in an equation as follows. That is, F is directly proportional. That alpha symbol refers to the proportionality sign. So F is directly proportional to d by dt of mv minus mu. This is the statement, or this is the equation of Newton's second law. This measures the amount of force, and hence it is called as law of force. Now I am going to explain Newton's second law, and using second law we will find an expression of the force. So for that, consider an object of mass m which is moving with the velocity u. Here u represents the initial velocity. After a small time interval t, a force acts on it. Now the object moves with the final velocity v. Here the product m and v, which is the product of mass and final velocity, refers to the final momentum, and mu is the initial momentum, which is the product of mass and initial velocity. Hence, the change in momentum is given by mv minus mu, the difference between final momentum and initial momentum. Next, what does rate of change means? Rate of change means any change with respect to time. Hence, here in Newton's second law, it is given as rate of change of linear momentum. This means that change in linear momentum with respect to time. So here d by dt of mv minus mu refers to the rate of change of momentum with respect to time. Hence, according to Newton's second law, rate of change of momentum is given by d by dt of mv minus mu. Hence, this is the equation of Newton's second law. Next, we shall see about direct proportion. What do you mean by direct proportion? Direct proportion means when one variable increases, the other variable also increases, means that proportion is called as direct proportion. Similarly, when one variable increases, the other variable decreases, then it is called as inverse proportion. Here, force is directly proportional to rate of change of momentum. That means that whenever the rate of change of momentum increases, the force increases. And when the change in momentum decreases, the force also decreases. This is the Newton's second law. Now, using the second law, we are going to derive an expression for force. So, I repeat once again. Consider an object of mass m which is moving with the initial velocity u. After a time interval t, a force is acting on the object. After that force acts, the object is moving with the final velocity v. Now, initial momentum is mu, the product of mass and initial velocity. Final momentum is the product of mass and final velocity mv. Hence, change in momentum is given by mv minus mu. Rate of change of momentum is given by d by dt of mv minus mu. According to Newton's second law, the force is directly proportional to rate of change of momentum. Hence, F is directly proportional to d by dt of mv minus mu. So, in order to remove the proportionality sign, we introduce a constant k here in the equation. F is directly proportional to mv minus mu divided by t. So before we introduce the proportionality constant, we are taking the m outside. Hence the equation becomes F is proportional to m into v minus u divided by t. Now the proportionality constant we are introducing is k. Hence we are removing the proportionality sign and introducing the proportionality constant k. So F is equal to km into v minus u divided by t. Here the value of k, we are taking it as 1. Hence the above equation becomes F is equal to m into v minus u by t. Now look at the term v minus u by t. What is it? V minus u refers to change in velocity. Divided by t refers to change in velocity per time taken. So what is it? It is nothing but the acceleration. Acceleration refers to rate of change of velocity. That is change in velocity per time taken. Hence, instead of v minus u divided by t, we introduce acceleration. Hence, the equation is changed as F is equal to ma. This is the expression for force, which is F is equal to ma. So, this derivation gives you the value of force, or this measures the force. This we have derived using Newton's second law. Next we shall see about the units of force. The unit of force is Newton in SI unit and the symbol is N. And in CGS system of unit, the unit is dyne. Next we shall see how we define 1 Newton. We will define from the expression of force F is equal to ma. Remember, we are going to define 1 Newton. So in the expression F is equal to ma, when will F becomes 1? When m and a is equal to 1, F will become 1. That is the definition. Very simple. The amount of force required for a body of mass 1 kg produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square. It is called as 1 Newton. Similarly, 1 dyne is the amount of force required for a body of mass 1 gram produces an acceleration of 1 centimeter per second square is the definition of 1 dyne. For the definition of 1 dyne, we have used the CGS unit of mass and centimeter we have used. Hence, that is the definition of 1 dyne. Now, for the equation F is equal to ma, we substitute the units for force, which is 1 Newton, and for mass it is kg, and for acceleration it is ms power minus 2. So, when we substitute all these units, we get the expression as 1 Newton is equal to 1 kilogram ms power minus 2. Once again I repeat, where kilogram is the unit of mass and meter per second square is the unit of acceleration and Newton is the unit of force. So hence when we substitute all these values, we get the value of 1 Newton is equal to, or 1 Newton can also be expressed in kilogram meter per second square. Similarly, 1 dyne is the amount of force acting on an object of mass 1 gram and it produces an acceleration of 1 centimeter per second square. Now in the same expression F is equal to ma, we apply the CGS unit of force, which is dyne, and mass, which is gram, and for acceleration it is centimeter per second square. We get the value of 1 dyne as 1 dyne is equal to 1 gram centimeter per second square, or 1 dyne can also be expressed as 1 gram centimeter per second square. Now I am taking the equation 1 Newton is equal to 1 kilogram meter per second square. Here now I am going to convert the values of kilogram and meter to gram and centimeter. So we know that 1 kilogram is equal to 1000 grams and 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeter. Hence when we substitute these values, we get 1 Newton is equal to 1000 gram into 100 centimeter per second square, or it can be written as s power minus 2. Now multiplying the numbers alone, or we bring the numbers alone in front. So the equation will become 1000 into 100 into gram centimeter per second square. Now when you multiply, we get 1 lakh gram centimeter per second square, which can be written as 10 power 5 gram centimeter per second square. Hence 1 Newton is equal to 1 lakh can be written as 10 power 5 and gram centimeter per second square is nothing but what we had seen is 1 dyne. So instead of gram centimeter per second square, we introduce 1 dyne. So 1 Newton is equal to 10 power 5 dyne. Now we have arrived at the relation between Newton and dyne. Next we shall see the definition of unit force and gravitational unit of force, which is same as the definition of 1 Newton and 1 dyne. So I am once again reading the definition. The amount of force required to produce an acceleration of 1 meter per second square in a body of mass 1 kg is called unit force. Next, the gravitational unit of force. The gravitational unit of force is kilogram force in SI units and the symbol is kgf. And it is gram force in CGS units and the symbol is gf. Already we know that the unit of force is Newton in SI units and dyne in CGS. Now we had learnt a new unit called gravitational unit. Next we shall see the relationship between these units. First, F is equal to ma. This we know according to our Newton's second law. Here, instead of force, I am going to substitute kgf, that is kilogram force, and the mass value as 1 kilogram and the value of A as 9.8 meter per second square, because the value of A, that is the acceleration due to gravity of any free falling object, is equal to 9.8 meter per second square, which is known as acceleration due to gravity. This once again we will discuss later. Now I am just introducing the value. Now just we are substituting the value of G as 9.8 meter per second square in the equation 1 kgf. So the equation becomes 1 kgf is equal to 1 kg into 9.8 meter per second square, which is equal to the numerals I am multiplying and bringing it to the front. So it becomes 9.8 into 1 becomes 9.8, and I am clubbing the units, that is kilogram into ms power minus 2 becomes kilogram meter per second square, which can also be said as s power minus 2, which is nothing but 1 Newton. You remember previous slides we saw the value of 1 Newton is equal to 1 kilogram m s power minus 2. Hence 1 kgf is equal to 9.8 Newton. Similarly, in CGS, gram force, that is 1 gf is equal to 1 gram into 980 centimeter per second square. That is this in CGS unit. Here also the numerals I am multiplying and the units I am clubbing. So it becomes 980 into gram centimeter per second square, which is equal to 980 into gram centimeter per second square is also called as dyne, which we saw before. Hence 1 gf is equal to 980 dyne. Hence finally we have arrived at the value of 1 kgf and 1 gf. This is an important one word. So you have to concentrate in this and you have to learn this. Next we shall see about impulse, which is nothing but a very large force acting for a short interval of time. The symbol for impulse is J, and it is the product of force and time. Hence J is equal to F into T. By Newton's second law, we know that force is directly proportional to the rate of change of momentum. Hence F is equal to del P by T, where del P refers to the change in momentum. So now I am rewriting the above equation in terms of del P. So we get del P is equal to F into T. Always del refers to any change. Here del P means change in P. P is nothing but the symbol for momentum. So del P refers to change in momentum. Now del P is equal to F into T. Now this is the equation 2. Consider the equation 1. Equation 1 is J is equal to F into T. Now closely observe the equations 1 and 2. In the equations 1 and 2, the RHS are the same. Hence, we equate the LHS. So, we get J is equal to del P. J is nothing but F into T, the product of force and time. Hence, F into T is equal to del P. This is also an expression for del P. Now we will see the unit of J. For that we use the definition once again. J is equal to F into T. F, the unit is 1 Newton, which is also equal to kilogram meter per second square or S power minus 2 into time. For time the unit is seconds. So seconds power 1. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to multiply these two units. So when we multiply the powers we have to add. So the unit becomes kilogram meter S power 1 minus 2. We are adding minus 2 and 1. Hence the equation becomes kilogram m S power minus 1. This is the unit of impulse. According to equation 3, that is J is equal to del P. Here J is the product of F and T. So F and T is equal to del P, or the change in momentum can be represented as the product of F into T. Product of F and T. Here the change in momentum can be achieved in two ways. Using the equation 4, either large force acting on a small interval of time or a small force acting in very large interval of time. In the two cases we can achieve the change in momentum. Next we shall see the examples of impulse. In automobiles, they are provided with springs and shock absorbers to increase the time of action of impulsive force, thereby decreasing the effect of impulsive force on the backbone of our body. Next, in cricket also, a fielder lowers his hands to catch the ball, thereby increasing the time of travel of the ball, and hence the effect of impulsive force on the palm will be less. The same thing you can experimentally verify also. What you need is a cricket ball. Ask your friend to throw at you. First case, you catch the ball without lowering your hands. Next case, you lower your hand, take some time and then catch it. In both the cases, the effect of force will be different. Feel it and then understand the concept of impulsive force. In first case, the effect of force is large and even you feel the pain in your palm than in case 2. In case 2, you feel less pain in your hands. Next, we shall see about Newton's third law of motion, which states that for every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. They always act on two different bodies. We can explain the Newton's third law of motion with an example. See the nearby picture. Here two persons are sliding on a board. When they come nearer and as they approach each other, they exert a force on each other. That force is called as action force. Now, due to Newton's third law, there exists an reaction force which is equal in magnitude with the action force, but it is in opposite direction of the action force. Hence, due to this reaction force, they are moving apart, and if you note, the direction of them is opposite to that of the action force. See the next example. The next example is when birds fly. When the birds fly, they push the air downwards, which is the action force. Now the reaction force is the air pushes the birds upwards. Next example is when a person swims, he pushed the water backwards, which is the action force, and the reaction is the water pushes him in the forward direction. Next example is when a bullet is fired. The gun exerts a force on the bullet, which is the action force, and at the same time the bullet exerts the same force on the gun, which is the reaction force, due to which the person carrying the gun feels a jerk during the firing. Next, we shall see about the principle of conservation of linear momentum. According to the principle of linear momentum, the linear momentum is conserved. That is, when no external force acts on the system, the linear momentum does not change. Conserved means remains the same without changing. We can prove this statement. Consider the below diagram. Here, object A of mass m is moving with the initial velocity u1, and an object B of mass m2 is moving with the velocity u2. After a time interval t, both of them collide with each other. Due to this collision, they mutually exert some force on each other. Fa is the force exerted on B due to A, and Fb is the force exerted on A due to B. After that, both objects move with different velocities v1 and v2 respectively. Now let us see the derivation part. Force on the body B due to A is given by Fb is equal to m2 into v2 minus u2 by t. This expression for force we had taken from the Newton's second law. You remember the Newton's second law? According to that law, the force is directly proportional to the rate of change of momentum. From there, we have taken the expression for force. Similarly, force on body A due to B is given by Fa is equal to m1 into v1 minus u1 by t. Now, by Newton's third law of motion, we know that the action force is equal to the reaction force. Both the forces' magnitudes are same, but the direction is different. That is, the direction is opposite. Always in physics, to denote the opposite direction, we use negative sign. Hence, we have given as Fa is equal to minus Fb. Now, we substitute the values of Fa and Fb. So, it becomes m1 into v1 minus u1 by t, which is equal to minus m2 into v2 minus u2 divided by t. Here, t is common in both the sides. So, we are cancelling out t. So, the equation becomes m1 into v1 minus u1, which is equal to minus m2 into v2 minus u2. Next, we will be taking this m1 and m2 inside the brackets. So, the equation becomes m1 v1 minus m1 u1, which is equal to m2 v2 minus m2 u2. Now, just a rearrangement. m1 v1 plus m2 v2 is equal to m1 u1 plus m2 u2. This expression, that is m1 v1 plus m2 v2, refers to the final momentum, since v1 and v2 represents the final velocity. Similarly, the expression m1 u1 plus m2 u2 represents the initial momentum, since u1 u2 represents the initial velocity. So finally, we have arrived at the expression final momentum is equal to initial momentum. That is, final momentum and initial momentum are same. That means that momentum is not changing. Hence, in the absence of an external force, the algebraic sum of momentum after collision is equal to the algebraic sum of momentum before collision, which is nothing but the statement of law of conservation of momentum. Next, what we are going to see is the propulsion of rocket, where the principle used is our Newton's third law and the law of conservation of linear momentum. When a rocket is fired, fuel is burnt and hot gas with large momentum is released. This is the action force. The reaction is the rocket is projected upwards with the same force. Thus, when the rocket is projected, the principle used is Newton's third law. Next, during the motion of rocket, we have seen the rocket detaching its parts while moving. Hence, the mass of the rocket decreases. By the law of conservation of momentum, the product mv, that is mass and velocity, must be constant. Hence, as the value of mass decreases, the value of v should increase so as to maintain the constant. Hence, the value of v increases and finally it attains the escape velocity value and it escapes from the Earth's atmosphere. Escape velocity is nothing but the velocity with which an object escapes from the Earth's atmosphere. And finally, the rocket is projected and it reaches the space. Hence, in rocket propulsion, two principles are used: Newton's third law of motion and law of conservation of linear momentum. This is also an important one word. Next, we shall see about Newton's gravitational law. According to this law, every particle of matter in the universe attracts every other particle in the universe with the force, and the force is directly proportional to the product of their masses and it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between their centers of masses, and the direction of the force acts along the line joining the masses. So, we consider the diagram. Here there are two objects of masses m1 and m2. The distance between their centers is r. Now I explain once again the Newton's gravitational law. According to the Newton's gravitational law, the force between the two objects is directly proportional to the product of masses. Here the product is m1 into m2 and it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So, F is directly proportional to 1 by r square. So, we can combine these two equations. So, we get F is direct proportional to m1 into m2 divided by r squared. Always to remove the proportionality sign, we introduce a constant. Here the constant used is capital G, which is nothing but the gravitational constant. So, F is equal to G into m1 m2 divided by r squared. The value of G is given by 6.674 into 10 to the power minus 11 Newton meter square kg power minus 2. Now we can rewrite the above equation for force for G and we can get an expression for G also. That is G is equal to F r square divided by m1 m2. From this expression only they have got the unit of G. For F it is Newton, for r square it is meter square and m1 and m2 it is kg squared. Since m1 m2 are in the denominator, the unit kg is raised to the power minus 2. Hence the unit came. Next, we shall see about acceleration due to gravity. Acceleration due to gravity means, suppose any object is thrown upwards, it comes down due to Earth's gravitational force. As it comes down, its velocity changes. Hence, change in velocity is called as acceleration. And this acceleration is due to the action of gravitational force. Hence, it is called as acceleration due to gravity, and the value of which is equal to 9.8 meter per second square. For any object thrown upwards, the acceleration due to gravity value is the same, 9.8 meter per second square, which doesn't change. Next, we shall see the relation between acceleration due to gravity and the gravitational constant. For that, consider an object of mass m on the surface of the earth whose mass is taken to be capital M. By Newton's gravitational law, F is equal to gmm by r squared, and by Newton's third law of motion, the force acting on the object of mass m is given by F is equal to ma. Here a is the acceleration due to gravity. For any free falling body, the value a is equal to g. Hence we are replacing a with g. So the equation becomes F is equal to mg. Now we are combining the two equations 1 and 2. 1 is according to the Newton's gravitational law and 2 is equal to the Newton's second law of motion. So the LHS of those two equations are same, that is the force. So we are equating the RHS. So when you equate the RHS, you get mg is equal to gmm by r square. In the two sides, you have m as common. So we are cancelling out. Hence we get the acceleration due to gravity value as g is equal to gm by r squared. This is the relation between acceleration due to gravity and gravitational constant. Now, using this relation between acceleration due to gravity and gravitational constant, we can find the mass of the earth. So, I am considering the equation g is equal to gm by r square. Rearrange the above equation for m. We get m is equal to g r squared by capital G. Substituting the known values, g, small g, that is acceleration due to gravity value is 9.8 meter per second square. The value of capital R, that is the radius of the earth, is taken to be approximately as 6,400 kilometer. The value of gravitational constant, what we know, is 6.674 into 10 power minus 11 Newton meter square kilogram power minus 2. Finally, when you substitute all these values and do some mathematical calculations, we get the value of m as 5,972 into 10 to the power 24 kilogram as the mass of the earth. Next, we shall see about the variation of acceleration due to gravity from the relation between g and gravitational constant. So, we shall once again start from the relation g is equal to gm by r square. Here the value of g varies inversely as r. That is, if the value of r decreases, the value of g increases, and when the g value increases, r decreases. This is called as inverse proportion. First, I told you about direct proportion and indirect proportion in previous slides. You remember, direct proportion means when one quantity increases, the other quantity also increases. That is called as direct proportion. In indirect proportion, when one quantity increases, the other decreases. This is called as inverse proportion. Here, the value of r, that is the radius, is maximum at equator. We all know that. And it is minimum at poles. Hence, the value of g, since it is inversely proportional, the value of g is minimum at equator and maximum at the poles. Now we come to weight. Weight is actually the gravitational force with which we are attracted towards the earth. The weight of an object is given by weight is equal to m into g. Here as I said previously, the value g varies. The weight of an object also varies directly. When g is minimum at equator, the weight is minimum at equator, and the value of g is maximum at poles. Hence, the weight of the object is also maximum at polar region, because the weight and g values are varying directly. The proportion here is direct proportion. Hence, as the value of g increases, the weight also increases. Hence, as we move to higher altitudes, the value of g reduces, and also when we move deep below the surface of the earth, the value of g reduces, and the value of g is 0, is equal to 0 at the center of earth. Next, we shall see the differences between mass and weight. Mass, actually what I said was, mass is the basic fundamental property of an object, whereas weight is a derived quantity. That is, weight we are deriving it from the gravitational force. Weight is defined as the gravitational force exerted on it due to the earth's gravity alone is called as weight, whereas mass is defined as the quantity of matter contained in a body. The SI unit of mass is kilogram, whereas the SI unit of weight is Newton. The symbol is N, and the symbol for kilogram is kg. Mass is a scalar quantity since it has only magnitude, whereas weight is a vector quantity because it has its direction. That is, the force acting on an object is directed towards the earth. Hence, it has direction, and hence it is a vector quantity. And finally, mass does not vary at all, but weight of a body varies from place to place as the acceleration due to gravity value changes, that we had discussed in the previous slides. So these are the differences between mass and weight. Next, we shall compare the value of g of moon and earth. It is found experimentally that the value of g in moon is equal to 1.625 meter per second square, and the value of g in earth is found to be 9.8 meter per second square, which we know already. Now we are going to divide the above two equations. So we get gm divided by ge is equal to 1.625 divided by 9.8. So doing the division, we get gm by ge is equal to 0.1654. So now I am going to move this ge to the right hand side. So the equation becomes gm is equal to 0.1654 into ge. Therefore, the gravity of moon, gm refers to the gravity of moon. The gravity of moon is 0.1654 times the gravity on earth. Now we shall find the weight of a person on the surface of moon and the surface of earth. Consider the mass of a person as 60 kg. The weight of the person on the earth is given as m into g. As we know, the weight expression is weight is equal to m into g. Now here instead of m we are substituting 60, and g, the g value of earth we are substituting, that is 9.8 meter per second square. So when we multiply we get the value of his weight on the earth is 588 newtons. Now the same man on moon, we are just finding the weight. So weight on the moon is given as m into g. For m I am substituting the mass of the person, which is 60, and the g value of moon, what we know is 1.625 meter per second square. That value we are substituting. So when we multiply we get the weight of the object of the man on moon as 97.5 Newton. Hence, the mass of the person remains the same as 60 kg on earth and moon, but the weight varies from place to place. Next, we shall see about apparent weight, which is weight we assume to possess. For example, let us consider a man in a lift. As the lift moves up and down, we feel our weight added at times and reduced at times. This is due to apparent weight. We will discuss this in detail. Here his actual weight is W is equal to mg, which is acting downwards. By Newton's third law, the lift also exerts a force on the man. This is called as reaction force. The reaction force is taken to be capital R, which is the apparent weight of the man. That is the weight he assumes to have. There are different possibilities of the apparent weight due to the motion of lift, which is discussed in the next slide. Consider the case 1, in which the lift is moving upwards. According to Newton's second law, the net force is given as ma, the product of mass and acceleration. F net is the net force acting on the object, which is the difference between R, the reaction force, and W, the action force. Hence, F net is equal to R minus W. Hence, we can write the above equation as R minus W is equal to F net. Instead of F net, I am substituting MA. Now the equation becomes R minus W is equal to MA. Now I am bringing the minus W to equation that side. So the equation becomes R is equal to W plus MA, where W is the weight of the man. So which is equal to mg plus ma. Now m is in common. The small m is common in two terms. So I am taking that outside. So the equation becomes R is equal to m into g plus a. R is the reaction force, or it is the apparent weight, which is the sum of mg and ma. Hence it is greater than the actual weight. Hence, we assume to possess a greater weight when the lift is moving upwards. Now, case 2. In this case, the lift is moving downwards. Hence, F net is equal to W minus R. Here, a doubt may arise. In case 1, we had it as F net is equal to R minus W. In this case, we are considering as W minus R. What is the difference? There is difference. The difference is in case 1, the lift is moving upwards. The direction of the lift is same as the reaction force R, and it is opposite to the actual weight W. Hence, we had given as minus W for opposite and plus R for the same direction. Usually in physics, the negative sign denotes that the direction is opposite. In case 2, the lift is moving downwards, which is in same direction as actual weight W, and it is opposite to the direction of the reaction force R. Hence it is given as minus R. Hence W minus R is equal to MA. That is the net force. Here just a small rearrangement. Capital R is equal to W minus MA. Hence the reaction force from the equation, what we understand is the apparent weight is less than the actual weight because it is given as W minus MA. This also we feel when we move in a lift. When the lift is moving downwards, we feel some of our weight has reduced. Now consider the case 3. Here the lift is at rest, hence the acceleration is 0. Here you can use either of the equation. Either you can have it as R minus W or W minus R, which doesn't mind. So R minus W is equal to 0, hence the value of G. The value of acceleration of the lift is 0, and hence I am having that R minus W is equal to 0. So the W I am taking it to the equation that side. Hence the equation becomes R is equal to W. R equal to W means the apparent weight is equal to the actual weight. So when the lift is not moving, you do not consider your weight added or subtracted. Your weight will be the same. Your assumed weight will be the same as your actual weight. Now consider the case 4. Now the lift is moving with an acceleration equal to the acceleration due to gravity, which is equal to 9.8 meter per second square. Hence the equation for R is equal to m into G minus A. Since the value of G and A are the same, R will be equal to 0 since A is equal to G. Hence in this case the apparent weight what you assume to possess is equal to 0 and you feel the weightlessness when the lift is moving with the acceleration equal to 9.8 meter per second square. Not only in lifts, when we are in amusement parks, that is in giant wheel and in roller coaster, we feel the weightlessness due to the apparent weight concept. What about astronauts? Are they really floating in space or there is no gravity in space? The answer is wrong. They are in case 4. What we had discussed about the lift, they are under the free fall condition. Here, both the astronauts and the space station are having the same acceleration. Hence, they are in a state of weightlessness. Finally, we will discuss about the application of Newton's law of gravitation. Using the Newton's law of gravitation, dimensions of heavenly bodies like mass of the earth, radius of the earth, acceleration due to gravity, and many can be found. And it also helps in discovering new stars and planets. And one of the irregularities in the motion of stars, which is wobble, leads to the disturbance in the motion of planet nearby. In this condition, the mass of the star can be calculated using the law of gravitation. And also, it helps to explain the germination of roots, which is due to the property of geotrophism and which is a property of a root responding to the gravity. And this Newton's law of gravitation also helps to predict the path of astronomical bodies. These are the applications of Newton's law of gravitation. By this, we end the Unit 1 of Science 10th Standard. So far, we had discussed about Newton's second law of motion and third law of motion, and the principle of conservation of linear momentum, and the propulsion of rocket, where the principle of linear momentum and Newton's third law are used. After that, we discussed about the universal law of gravitation and the differences between mass and weight. Finally, we had discussed about the apparent weight and its application we saw. In lift and in amusement parks, in giant wheel, in roller coaster, how do we feel the weight reduced? That is due to the apparent weight. All those things we discussed. And finally, we had discussed about the application of Newton's gravitational law. So if you have any queries, kindly contact me. You can give me your doubts in the comment section so that I can clarify it in the next session. So in the next video, we will discuss the problems related to lesson 1. So far, lesson 1 has been completed. So in 2 videos, we had seen the lesson 1. So if you do not understand, once again watch it. If you keep on watching it only, you can understand the concept well. So keep on watching and keep on learning. Thank you.